I haven't actually checked if anyone is here yet, so I should probably check that and open Twitch on the side. Hi, welcome. My name is Kai. I am a tech content specialist, and I started doing this stream last year. I did one with Julia where we talked about freelancing. But I figured with all the layoffs happening in tech and otherwhere as well, it might be a good idea to talk about all these like core skills that are, I call them core skills on purpose, just like Kevin does in You Got This. I call them not soft skills, but core skills because I think they're very, very important. But those are the skills that are often missed. So we're going to talk about them this year. My plan is to do this possibly monthly. Don't quote me on that. I am very chaotic with these things these days. I'm starting a new job like 2 weeks from now. So things are as always in flux. But the plan is to just kick it off now with my guest, Bekah, who will talk with me about networking.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Do you want to introduce yourself a bit? Who you are, what you do?
Sure. I just had a doctor's appointment. My doctor asked me what I did for a living, and I was like, I don't know, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I'm Bekah. I am the technical community builder at Deepgram, where I do a little bit of this and a little bit of that. I am on the developer relations team, so I do some community building, some writing, speaking, education, a lot of different things in tech, but I'm a career transitioner, so I've only been in tech for a couple of years. And before that, I taught college English for 10 years. And what else do I do? I'm one of the maintainers for Virtual Coffee, which is a community of developers at all stages of the journey supporting each other.
Which is very awesome, and which is how I met Bekah. Mm-hmm. I was basically, so I'm kind of I'm what you call maybe a natural networker, because I'm very outgoing. ADHD has not equipped me with a filter. So I've always had a very easy time talking to people and meeting people and networking. I remember people fairly easily. Pandemic has racked my brain a little bit, but I remember people and faces and actually how they go together. And yeah, so whenever I was at networking events, that was mainly offline back then, I always had a fairly easy time talking to people. But a lot of my friends, surprisingly, aren't exactly like me. And a lot of them are like, how do you do this? Mm-hmm. And it turns out I cannot really give advice for a way of functioning that I do not inhabit. I don't know if that makes sense, but like, I am not introverted or particularly shy in most situations, so I don't really know how to help people get over that, which is why I asked around a bit if anyone had maybe approached networking from that side. And Bekah was like, yeah, actually, I'm actually shy, which honestly, knowing you, you wouldn't know,
yeah.
which speaks for your expertise here. So I said, let's do this. I think we're gonna chat a bit, depending on whether people have questions right away or maybe later. We're gonna either fit them in when they fit or just at the end. If you have any questions, please post them in the comments, and we will get to them. Yeah, we still have only 2 viewers, but we are recording this, so it'll be fine. If anyone wants to watch this later and has questions afterwards, we can both be reached on Twitter. So yeah, let's jump right in. So for me, networking, pretty chill. I just go there with the way I am and I talk to people. But not everyone finds it as easy to walk up to people and talk to them. How did, like, when you started networking, how did that feel to you? And when did you realize, oh my God, I have to do something about that? And what did you do about it?
It felt terrible, first of all. So I really struggle in situations where I'm like not sure what my role is. So I was a college English teacher for 10 years, but I knew what was expected of me. This is what's expected of me in this scenario with these students in front of me. But I found once I had transitioned out of that role, I really didn't know what was expected of me or what to say in situations. And I felt really, really nervous. And so the first conference I went to was a really good experience, I went with my husband, who was already in tech. I was learning how to code at the time, but I felt really nervous because one, I was a career transitioner. Two, I held a full-time job or a job in tech at all. And three, I was a woman at a tech conference and I felt very insecure about that. And also I was a mom, which like, I just like kept like adding layers of insecurity. And then I'm like, I'm afraid of people. I'm afraid to like talk to people. So what am I?
Couldn't tell. It's amazing, honestly.
I've come a long way. So I was really nervous, and luckily for me, I knew somebody else who was coming to the conference. And so she and I had met online. We were both learning to code. We were both moms, and she was super outgoing. So I think one of my biggest pieces of advice is like find an extrovert.
I admit my partner and my friends have done this, that you just latch onto them and just be like, can I please follow you around? And we'll be happy to do it. That's the thing. You just tell us and we'll be happy to do it.
Exactly. That was it. Like I find my extrovert and I follow them around. And then we accumulate more people, and some of them are extroverts and some of them are introverts. And then we all just kind of like feel comfortable around each other.
I just had this I just had this hilarious idea of like when you advertise a conference, you can be like, is it bring your own extrovert or do you provide them?
Yeah, we had Norando from Virtual Coffee on the podcast once. And what did he do? But it was like, it wasn't extrovert as a service, but it was like it was something to that extent. Like find a person who helps you connect with other people. And I even think like putting it out there on social media, hey, I'm going to this place. Is anybody else going? And then at least like you can do those awkward icebreaker conversations before in DMs, like, hey, how are you? You know, and
yeah. I've also done this thing where like I've had mutuals on Twitter for a while and it knew they were going to the same event, and that's great because then you can be like, oh, are you at such and such from Twitter? And it's so nice to finally meet you in real. So that's also something that I would do as an extrovert still. Like it's definitely easier. Like even I get nervous obviously, so it's easier if you already know someone, like know one person, and that's your saving grace usually. Yeah. So that was your very first conference, like very first networking event and a conference to boot. Like I started with small meetups. That's kind of my advice. Start with small meetups because I don't know, I find those easier, but might be.
Yeah, well, and for me too, and the big difference, and this is why a lot of people don't really see me as shy or as an introvert, because I spend so much time online cultivating these relationships. And I do want to say that because I understand my role in those situations, it's much easier for me. I have way more control over who I am in an online presence and what I do in the presence of other people than I do in person, right? Like I once was giving a talk live and I like suddenly got very overwhelmed and thought, okay, like my choice is just to run out of here and like be done maybe forever or like to sit here and try and get through this thing. When you're online, I find that it's like this nice space to kind of ease into things, because if you want to turn your camera off, you can turn your camera off. If you want to mute, you can mute. Yeah. If you are afraid of the words that are going to come out of your mouth, you can put it in the chat. And so there are many different modes of participation that kind of allow you to ease into things in a way that works for you. And this is why I know people like often want to say negative things about lurkers, like, oh, we have all these lurkers and they're not actively participating. Like, well, what does it mean to actively participate in something? Because most of the communities I'm a part of, I'm a lurker and I'm there, I'm learning from other people. And, you know, maybe it's not active, but all of the impact that they've made on me in those scenarios plays out in my life beyond me lurking in their Slack or whatever. And that also leads me to feel more comfortable in situations where I am in person, or I am face to face with them on a Zoom screen or whatever. So like kind of like finding that space where you start to feel comfortable can be really important in that journey to networking with other people.
I think it's some fear of lurkers comes perhaps from the people who don't lurk actually being worried that they're taking up too much space. So I think at least that's it for me. Like if someone lurks, I never think it's because they're introverted. I'm like, oh my God, I'm taking up too much space. Because that's what I would probably also think in a like face-to-face real world, like physical situation. But again, probably a good reminder for myself that it's not always about me. It might just be about them not wanting to say something.
Wait, and I want to go back to that first conference experience for a second, because Kyle Shevlin, he's in tech as well. He was there, and there was a group of people who were talking, and my husband introduced me to the group, and Kyle said like, hey, let's make space. Let's use the Pac-Man method. And I had not heard of the Pac-Man method prior to that, but I just really love it. So like Pac-Man is this cartoon character, and it's kind of like a circle with like a
game. It's a video game character. Yeah.
Yeah. Pie-shaped mouth, like taken out of it, right? And so the idea behind the Pac-Man method is that when you have a circle of people, you always leave space. So this is where Pac-Man's mouth is, and like just like imagine a circle drawn around there. You always leave space for one more person. And so as I entered that group of people to be part of the conversation, the circle needed to open up, not just for me, but for the next person who was going to enter that circle. And even Kyle explaining that situation to me, like we always want to make space for one more person, made me feel more comfortable. And it wasn't, let's make space for one more person who has something to give to this conversation. It's let's make space for any person that wants to be here in the way that they feel safe. And I think that, finding those environments can be tricky, but can be really useful to helping you grow in what you're doing.
I only heard about this method like 2 weeks ago at a virtual coffee chat, actually. And I love the idea that it's just like physically with your body language signaling that this is an open environment and new people are welcome in, rather than what also often enough happens with people who aren't aware of this. They're just clustered in a group, and then you're like, I will not approach a closed group. I can be loud and obnoxiously extroverted, and I will still not do that because I have ADHD. I have rejection sensitive dysphoria. I'm not going to do that. It's just not going to happen. But I think that's a really nice thing. Also, I've always liked it when people are like, even so, like you said that your husband introduced you, which is like super nice. But also when someone who doesn't know you and sees you standing there, it's just like, hey, come on, join us. Like I think that is a very nice thing to do and not at all intrusive, but I don't know how others feel about that.
Yeah, I Ramon, and sorry, I can't roll R's. I'm physically incapable.
Ramon. So, I can't roll them either. I just fake it. Ramon. Yes.
It sounds like I'm like coughing up a hairball if I try. So I once had a language teacher in Costa Rica who could not roll her R's, and Spanish was her primary language. And so it made me feel a lot better about myself. Like, okay.
I mean, my Hungarian relatives make fun of me because I can't roll my R's. So yeah, understood.
In the chat said events that mention Pac-Man. It shifted, and like I couldn't see it. Method up front are in
wait. Like I will show it. Here we go.
Yes. Oh, nice.
This is why I like StreamYard, it is simple and I don't need to know anything.
I once was like last minute thrown into hosting a StreamYard by myself, and I had never done it before. I put like at the bottom, it was like somebody's comment goes here. It's like flashes across the screen. Like, whoops. That's preserved online somewhere. You can check it out. I don't know. Mentioning it up front is huge, and having organizers. So if anybody is going to a networking event and they're not sure whether or not this is a good place for them to be because of being nervous about that, being introverted, shy, whatever, finding recommendations from people, I 100% feel that. And the organizers of that conference, it was Revolution Conf, which is not currently happening. They did a great job of encouraging people to take advantage of the hallway track and meet new people. And it was my first conference. I'm like, this is a little weird. Like, why don't they just chill out for a minute? And then I've been to other conferences since then. Like, oh, that is why they didn't chill out for a minute. You know, they were really doing a good job of encouraging people to interact with each other, feel safe with each other, and to continue to go there.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciated that. And that conference that I was just at last week, they have open spaces for conversation. And I found that that was a really inviting space for somebody to set a topic. So, you know, as part of that, maybe sometimes creating your own space is one of those things that can help you to feel comfortable in networking because you have more control over the situation.
Definitely. Ramon also said another thing I've seen is events asking folks to volunteer to wear a "Hey, come up to me, I'll guide you around and be your pal" badge. I think all of this points to the fact that organizers of whether it's a conference or just a meetup, the culture is extremely important. Like if you go to a meetup and everyone's clustered around and they've known each other for ages and you get the feeling that they are not interested in getting to know you, they're probably not interested in getting to know you. And if there's a way you can find a meetup that is also in that field, but a different one, go to the other one.
Yeah, that is such good advice. And I find that there's a question there that is worth asking. And I don't know how to phrase it, but I know that I've gone to conferences where people have said, this is an amazing conference. And I felt very lonely at those conferences. And it's for exactly that reason. You know, there are people that love that conference because they've been going every year for the last 10 years. And I didn't have a place there.
Yeah.
And so
that's hard. That's hard because, I mean, you can try coming back with a conference, it would be next year. With a meetup, it would be next week, and see if things are different. Because sometimes, so I've experienced this with meetups because I was working at a co-working space in Vienna where I saw a lot of different meetups happen. And it's funny because different languages, different meetups, they behave, the dynamics are so different and the culture is so different. But I often saw this like thing where someone new comes the first week and they're just standing on the side. But once you come back a second time, people are like, oh, you were here last week, weren't you? And then it's a little bit easier. But there are also meetups where you can come back every week and you will still feel like it's like you just can't get into it. I mean, I assume that happens with other things as well, like hobbies, sports, whatever. But it's difficult when you get the feeling that I need to go there because it's for my profession. I need to get involved, and then people just won't let you in. Little bit of a hark back to the Pac-Man method. Daylight Turkey says, whenever that Pac-Man happens and I join a group, I still don't know how to participate in an already ongoing conversation. Tips. I think what Bekah said before, that you aren't necessarily brought in to contribute, but just to actually be allowed to able to participate. And just, I think it's not weird if you don't contribute or participate to an already ongoing conversation. You can wait until the topic changes a bit.
Yeah. And, you know, I think I have a lot of thoughts here. One is, if you want to participate, that's one thing. And what does participation mean to you? Because I think one of the things that we undervalue a lot is listening is participation, right? You don't always have to say something. You can listen, you can acknowledge, you can be part of the conversation in that way. But if you want to join the conversation in a verbal way, then it depends, right, on the situation. And I find that online environments can be a lot easier because they've made tools for us to be able to do that, right? Like there's a hand raise function in Zoom and now in Google Meet. And we utilize those all the time at Virtual Coffee for that very reason, to allow people to participate and to jump in, rather than, sometimes there can be people who are really excited and they will talk the entire time if you want them to. And I know it's been good for me because sometimes like I get on a tangent, and for me, seeing a hand raise up in Zoom,
back to the topic. Yeah.
Right. And like, I'm not the only person that like wants to talk, like, and it that for me is a total ADHD thing of I'm just going on this on this journey right now. You're taking a journey with me through my tangent in my mind. And now like, oh,
we
okay.
always
now,
come back though, ADHD
right?
is.
Yes.
We always come back. You might not see that coming, but we make it back.
Yeah. I totally appreciate that. So I would say in a lot of those situations, sometimes just if it's in person, sometimes you have to jump in and you're going to have to put yourself out there. And I know that requires a lot of energy for a lot of people, like to be able to say,
yeah,
what do you think about this? Or, you know, I've got something to say about that. And sometimes for me, mentally preparing myself for that situation is really important. I know I might be in a situation where I might want to be part of the conversation. How am I going to do it? Right. And
do you have something like back pocket topics like we have at VC? We have back pocket topics in case no other conversation happens. Do you have that, like when you go to an event, do you have that at the back of your mind? Okay, so if I don't know what to say, I can always have a conversation about this and this and this, because like a lot of us neurodivergent people do that. It is not unheard of. Yeah, but I've been wondering, do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really great idea. So having some kind of topic, something that you want to bring up, to be able to be part of that conversation. And so that was kind of like at that conference, I ran an open space on the impact of AI on education. And so it was really great to be able to hear from a diverse group of voices on what they thought about what that was going to be. It might be something, it might be a question. And I do find that questions can be a really great way to jump into the conversation or to, you know, be part of the conversation. So if somebody says something, say, oh, have you heard of, or can you tell me more about that? I had so my background again is in English, and I had a teacher in a Shakespeare class, and he would always say, tell me more. And then just stare at you, which was like a little bit overwhelming. So maybe there's a way to do that without like really staring someone down. But be like genuinely being interested in what other people are saying. And that's why I think that listening is such an important aspect of being a part of a group, because it allows you to respond or to ask questions, and asking questions doesn't require you to assert any kind of like credibility or expertise over something, which is not anything that I feel comfortable doing. You know, I'm not.
I wish other people weren't so comfortable extolling their expertise with it. Ramon also said that what helps his anxiety is to get someone going off on a topic they're passionate about as soon as possible, which goes with the whole asking questions thing. So I'm actually I'm also a career changer. I think I'm on my third or fourth career at this point. I used to be a journalist. Asking questions is one of my favorite things. The good thing is I'm also not just asking them to ask them, but because I genuinely am always curious, like about what people do, where they're coming from, what they think, and so on. So I think asking questions is a great idea. That's absolutely fantastic. And it's probably going to end up with someone asking you a question back, and then you're in that conversation, and there you go. It wasn't as scary.
Yeah.
You mentioned that it's exhausting. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Extrovert or not, I am also exhausted after these kind of social events. I think that's a completely standard thing to feel. How do you feel like you have to put a mask on for these things? Like you're just like, okay, this is my networking persona, and like I'm putting that on, power pose, whatever, and in I go? Or have you gotten to the point where you can just be yourself?
That's a really fantastic question. And I've never been asked that question. And I think it is a really good one.
I did mention I was a journalist.
And I do it. The last year for me has been a wild journey of working through a lot of different ways of presenting myself, being a part of communities, and understanding how I function in those things. And there are times where I know that I have to put on that mask, right? And like I find that prior to virtual coffee, I spent a lot of time wearing that mask because I was just very, very nervous. I was afraid that people would judge me, like, oh, she goes off on tangents all the time. She doesn't know what she's talking about. She talks really loudly in public, and that's really off-putting or whatever. And so I felt like very, very self-conscious. And I think that I mentioned to you earlier that I maybe am an ambivert, but what I like most closely identify with is a shy ADHD person. And I think a lot of that like played into my feelings of myself. And what I often said was like being an introvert, because it can be really hard to be in a conversation and you're really excited about something, and like suddenly you notice that people are not on board and you're like, oh no, how long have I been going on about this thing that I'm really excited about, and they're not interested, or they disagree and they're afraid to say it, and or I was too excited for people. And I've luckily gotten to the point where and this is like, the more you do it, the easier it becomes, I think, for a lot of people. I've gotten to the point where it's much easier for me to just be me in those situations. But there are times where I do feel like, usually when I'm wearing the mask, it's because I feel unsure about myself. And I'm not sure how other people feel about me. And having, usually, all it takes is having one person there that I know supports me. And then I can be comfortable taking off that mask. Like, this person knows who I am. And it's okay for me to be that person because they've got my back, and a lot of times it's a perceived issue of, this person's not going to like me, or this person's going to think that I am not not whatever I want them to think of me.
Yeah, that's the ADHD and the RSD kicking in, I guess, for most of us. I should really talk to some neurotypical people at some point, but I end up never doing this neither on this stream or on podcasts or anything. So that's kind of, I wonder how they see that. No, this is perfectly fine. Ramon said, through many identity crises, I still haven't figured out if it's a mask or just a facet of my personality that I bring to a specific context. And I want to say to that, I called it a mask, but mask sounds like it's something negative. It isn't. I think it is perfectly normal to exist in different spaces in different ways. Context changes everything. I am like, I like to say I bring my whole self to work, and these days I don't hide that I have ADHD. I advocate for my needs. All of this stuff. I say I am anxious about this, so that's why I'm behaving this way. I'm trying to explain and make it easier for people to understand why I am the way I am sometimes. But of course, I still am different in different contexts, and I think all of us are, and I think that's also a completely understandable reaction. So I think I wouldn't worry too much whether it's part of your personality or a mask, Ramon. It's just a side of you. I think that's how I see it. I think that's okay. If it's not completely exhausting to you, then that's fine. Because I find when I have to pretend too much to be someone I'm not, to function in a certain context, like before I was in tech, and I had to like function in more office environments, that was exhausting as fuck for me. Like, honestly, that's terrible. But just like, I guess it's a bit like code switching, which BIPOC people will understand pretty well, and a lot of queer people as well. It's just you adapt slightly to the environments you're in. The question is, how exhausting is it? Which leads me to, what do you do when you get overwhelmed? Do you just take yourself off to the loo and hide there for a bit? Do you find a quiet corner? Or
And I think it's hard. Yes. And one of the things that I've learned over the last couple of years is it's okay to do that, right? Like, I thought that it was really important for me to be at all the things all the time and to just burn myself out, which I have continually done over. Here's a tangent. I was in an interview a couple of years ago, And the interviewer asked, how do you deal with burnout? And I said, well, I go as hard as I can all the time until I burn out for a couple of weeks and I'm very exhausted, and then I start over again.
Like, but the thing is, you're not actually recovered after a couple of weeks. So
yeah. And it was not a lie. The response was very like they didn't know what to say, but like, I don't know, you asked me for an answer and I gave you an honest one. So
my answer would probably be, I burned out twice. I'm really good at burnout now.
Yeah, I'm really good at it.
I'm getting better at it. Like, I don't burn out for as long.
One of my strengths.
Yeah, no, this like this is also where social media plays into it. Ramon and I have talked about this a fair bit in the past, especially in context of the DevRel world and influencers. Like, when you look at social media, it seems like everyone is doing all the things all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, people like Kevin are actually doing all the things all the time, and I don't know how he does it, but
yep.
I don't know. And then it makes you feel not exactly FOMO, but like you're not doing enough for your career, for your like presence, online presence, whatever. And that can be so stressful. So I just kind of like to pick the networking opportunities that I feel comfortable with. It feels weird calling virtual coffee a networking opportunity because that's not how I see it. It's a community, but obviously it's also a network. And I got the job that I'm starting in 2 weeks, I got via a different kind of Slack community, just because someone saw that I was looking and recommended me. So that can be networking. Something you might not think of as networking might be networking. Like, communities, whether they're online or in person. Like, at the end of the day, if you play handball with a few people, that might be networking too, because I don't know, someone there might know about a job that you could be interested in, or introduce you to someone to have a new stream, or so networking is all kinds of things. And we often, like, people are like, oh, networking is gross, because they think of networking as like these salesy or these like startup bros in their suits who go to the meetups and they're like, yo, I have a startup. And that's gross. I don't like it either. But that's not what it has to be. It can be Heineke. It can be whatever you want it to be. And you can make use of the opportunities that are right there. And
and just to add to that, like, for a couple of things, you like said so many good things there, so I'm gonna try and remember all of them. The first one, the idea of community is a really great space to practice networking, right? Because I tend to think of community as being a safe space for people. If you find a community that you're more likely to share and to be open and to work through challenges that you're facing and be vulnerable about those things. So you'll find that, hey, I would never say this in front of like a group of random strangers, but like, I'm going to share because I know most of the people in this room. And so that's like another great path to move into. And the second part of that is your network is not just the people you know. It's the network of your network. And it continues to go. And I don't know how many times that's benefited me in the last couple of years, but just being able to reach out to other people and say, I'm feeling really nervous about this situation, and you might have a connection to that. And even in the last couple of days, I know that I've been able to utilize that network to help me overcome some things that I'm nervous or scared about, right? And so being able to tap into that network can be invaluable to gaining that experience of networking and being comfortable in different situations. Like, I gave it my first keynote last week. And I was like very, very nervous and thought like, this is going to be really awful. I'm going to do a terrible, terrible job. And my brain is going to blank and I'm going to be in front of people and not know what to say. And somebody who was working one of the booths, her name is Diana from Vonage. She was connected to me by Chris DeMars, who comes to Virtual Coffee, who I met in that very first Pac-Man circle at that conference that I talked about. She just amped me up. She was like, it doesn't matter. And she sent me a DM right before my talk to just like get me excited and feel okay about who I was. And so this person that I never met before in my life was connected to me by somebody in my network, and she knew the right words to help me to be excited about that moment. And that was really pivotal for me. And so
sorry.
No, I was just going to say, sometimes that's all it takes, is just knowing someone.
And also the thing is, people often think of networking as doing something to get something out of it. That should not be how it is. Like Diana did this for you because she wanted to, and not because she was hoping to get something out in the future. What you might do is, sure, at some point you might be able to repay her with a favor of a similar kind, or you pay it forward. And that is something that I'm a huge fan of. Networking is not just you do this to network and to get connections or whatever. You use those as well. I'm fairly well connected in certain corners of the tech world. I tend to get connected quite quickly. But I make sure to always use that for good. Like, with great power comes great responsibility, I guess. When I can boost someone looking for a job, I do that when I think someone I'm connected to on LinkedIn or whatever might see it that could help them. When someone needs an in at a company where I know someone, I will introduce them. Like, intros are a huge thing. I need to find a blog. I was gonna write a blog post about how to do a good intro, because that will go too far for today, I think. But this would kind of lead us into the etiquette of online networking, which I have some huge feelings about. And it's just a topic that has come up in various virtual coffee meetups in the past, because people are somewhat uncomfortable with the way some people reach out, cold contact people on LinkedIn. I don't know if you've had any experiences with that.
Sorry, my kid is like definitely using this opportunity to ask for ice cream. Like, my mom's not going to tell me no right now.
Smart kid.
Go eat your ice cream.
Very smart. No, but basically the question is, how do you feel about, so one thing is going to networking events, and we have a question about that, but we'll get back to later on. But how do you feel about getting in touch with people online that you may not necessarily have? Jesse's asking if you want him to get the kids on. Love this.
It's all good. They're gonna eat ice cream for whatever. This is post lunch ice cream.
So I've had some. I'm not a huge fan of people trying to. There are some people on LinkedIn who try to connect with everyone without sending a message, without saying how they're connected to you, with you never having had any kind of interaction with them. That's something that kind of pisses me off. But it's unfortunately seems to be like, some people seem to understand networking on LinkedIn as having as many contacts as possible, but those are not good contacts. Like, as any person in sales will tell you, there are contacts that are good and worthwhile, and contacts that don't mean much. How do you feel about the etiquette around all that and how it's being observed?
Yeah, LinkedIn is super confusing. I don't understand. I kind of have my LinkedIn semi locked down, so you have to follow me before you send me a message, just because I was getting some really weird stuff. I'm like, what? I thought this was. I didn't think this was a dating site.
I've heard that, sadly. I've actually heard that before from people.
It's been much better since people have to follow me first. Like, it definitely creates that friction that's needed to keep those people out. But I think that this goes back to something that you said earlier that I wanted to touch on. And it's that idea of transactional relationships. Like, you can have a transactional relationship, but you are decreasing your chances of success by a lot, I don't know, lots of percentages. But I think that what's important is people are way more likely to interact with you
or help
to remember you for a job if you provide some kind of context or understanding. And so for me, I think like there's a couple of things. So the talk that I gave last week was all about storytelling, like the power of storytelling. And I think that even and this goes back to that idea of listening, if you have heard somebody's story and you feel impacted by that story, then you let them know, first of all, like, I heard your story and this is what really stuck out to me. So it shows that you have an investment in this person and it doesn't feel like a cold DM, right? Like there are very spammy DMs where people just want your attention and they're just like YOLOing it, but to everybody they know. And like,
yeah.
that you might get responses that way. You might. But the ones that are investments in your future, those are the ones where you make the personal connections.
Yeah.
So why are you reaching out to that person? Number one, know why you're reaching out to that person. Number two, let them know why you're reaching out to them. And like number three,
and reaching out includes connecting on LinkedIn, because I'm like, why are you connecting with me? I don't know who you are.
Right. Yeah. I still don't understand that.
We might have 10 people in common, but I still don't know who you are. You know,
I'm the person on Facebook that like denies requests all the time. Like I'm only on Facebook because like my kids' stuff is often run through Facebook, but like I'm like, why are you randomly requesting to be my friend? No, I don't know you. Like I don't care if you have 50 other people that are in context with me.
Also,
like,
that's how scammers work, but never mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but like for example, like I recently just as Bekah as well gave a talk at You Got This, the online conference.
Yeah,
and
fantastic.
And I watched Jason's talk and I really liked it. So since we've kind of sort of been in each other's orbit, like we've interacted on Mastodon a few times. I've seen him boost some like good trans ally stuff and stuff like that. So we've been aware of each other. But I took that opportunity not to network, but to tell him that I really liked his talk. Yes. And I messaged him on LinkedIn and connected there with him. And I was like, hey, I really like your talk. Because I genuinely did. It was an amazing talk. He's a really good speaker. And I could relate to the topic, even though it was not directly related to my current professional situation. So that is like, did I connect with him to get something out of it later? No. I connected with him because I thought he was doing something good. And he was like, I like your talk as well. Or he wanted to see it. I don't know, something like that. But in the future, if he needs something, we have that connection. If I need something, we have that connection already. We know who each other are. That doesn't seem grammatically correct, but you know what I mean. We know who the other is.
Is. Yeah.
Meanwhile, yeah, someone who just has like 10 people in common with me, but doesn't tell me why they're contacting me. I don't see that as an actual contact. That's like poking on Facebook.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Do they still have that? Because that
no,
was
they
really
don't,
weird.
because that was weird. So like, yeah, I think probably to sum up, important parts of the etiquette are, don't like randomly reach out to people without actually, like, don't try to connect them with them, friend with them, without telling them why. Obviously following someone on Twitter is something different, but where it requires a mutual acknowledgement of the connection, don't do that without saying why. Just add a message. That's easily done. Even if you don't have LinkedIn Premium, you can just
tell me why. Yeah, sorry. ADHD, Nick, it's your fault. I had to sing it out. Listen, I have to work very hard to not like constantly sing out random lyrics when people post
That's
them.
Echolalia. That's what it is.
Oh, okay. I need to.
That's a name for it
because I've got it.
For what it's worth, if you hadn't seen it before me, my brain would have gone there as well. So, yeah, definitely. What was I gonna say? Damn you, Nikki.
Well, I think it is like,
yes, if you want to connect to someone on LinkedIn, you click connect and then you can actually add a message, like it says that on the right. So you don't need to have premium to be a decent human being on LinkedIn. And then tell people why you're reaching out. Like, hey, maybe it's just something as simple. I like your profile. We're in the same field. I thought it would be nice to connect in case we can, work with each other. Some, whatever, something. Give context.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think maybe if you think of it, like if you were calling someone and then hanging up, it's like that to me. Like if you just connect someone on LinkedIn without saying why, that's weird. do that. Also, like cold outreach messages. Some people do that apparently when looking for a job. They find, and apparently some people actually coach and advise people to do that, where they like find someone on LinkedIn who works at that company and then do cold outreach to them. I find that weird. A lot of people don't like that. I think one way to go about it is to find someone that you're connected to that has a connection to someone at a company, if you can't have a direct connection, and have them intro you, which is something that I've done plenty of times for others and others have done for me. That's usually helpful.
Yeah. And I have done the cold DM thing, but I always provide context, right? Like humans are meant to connect to each other, and understanding why you're meant to connect to each other is super important. And this is maybe it will sound creepy to some people, but like when I have been previously looking at a position, I'll let people know, hey, I'm interviewing for this position. I see that you interacted with this person in a way that shows that you really know who they are. And I'm just trying to get some insight before I jump right into something. And it might come across as creepy, right? The worst thing they can do is pretty much ignore me. I mean, they might say like, that's really weird. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm really weird. I'm like, I won't contact you ever again. But that's never happened to me. No,
I think if you go about it with like kind of a charming way, then that works quite well.
I think like coming at it in a vulnerable way, like I think that we often feel very self-conscious about being really honest about how we feel about things. And that's the best thing that I've ever done in the last 3 years, is being really honest despite myself. Like, I feel like I shouldn't be saying this because people might judge me, but I'm going to go ahead and say it anyway, right?
Yeah.
And maybe that doesn't work for everyone, but that has pretty much worked for me every single time.
Same.
Because when you sense that somebody else is being vulnerable, you're more likely to be vulnerable or to respond in some way.
Definitely. Like the unapologetically being yourself works really well, as long as you're not like super creepy. Then maybe don't unapologetically be yourself. But other than that, I think just honesty and being like, listen, I know you don't know me from Adam, but this is the situation. Totally get it if you don't have the time, nerves, or willingness to do this, but could you please? Am I getting spam here? I think I'm getting spam.
It's very weird.
What do I do about this?
I don't know. I'm not sure how that works.
Activate shield mode. I have activated shield mode. I have no idea what has happened.
I don't know what that means. So it's cool. We'll keep talking. We're very chill. So it was already activated.
I don't know if it's gone now. I think it's not gone, but I don't know how to get rid of it.
I don't see it.
Okay, cool.
I think you're good.
Because I see it's still on.
It's not on the Twitch stream.
That's cool. Oh no! I killed the chat. Sorry, Finn. I will shield mode off again.
Learning as we go.
I am very bad at this, as you can all see.
Okay. No, it's fine. Followers only, so they should be following you anyway.
That's fine. It's fine. Anyway, where were we? I am easily confused by things like that.
No, it's totally fine. I think that idea of always making those connections, and it's hard to be vulnerable with people, especially people that you don't know. But I think that it's important to recognize that like human beings, I think, are created for vulnerability. We're created to be able to share and connect with each other. And we have frequently put up these walls. And I honestly think that the pandemic surprisingly hasn't helped. I think it should have helped. But
I mean, I've noticed that people talk more about mental health since the pandemic started. So that's something where there is more openness, definitely. And because it's easier to talk about stuff online and things have shifted to online, I think that's also helpful. But I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's that like complex interaction of like curated content, right? Like we put the best of ourselves out there. And I also think like this goes back to one of the questions that we had earlier. One of my goals for the new year is to talk more about my failures, because I think that it's super important to be able to grow yourself and to help other people to grow. Like there's nothing wrong with failing. Like in my talk, I think Edison failed thousands of times before creating the carbon filament light bulb, right? Like, and that changed the world. You can fail thousands of times and still change the world. And so it's okay to talk about things. And when you talk about failures, it's almost an invitation for people to share, right? Like the bar is not set so high, like, hey, I raised rounds that was like $900 million. Like, oh, I fed my kid lunch today.
I would also recommend staying away from people who sound like that. Like if you're at an event, or even if it's online, and there are people who are boasting, those are not people that it necessarily makes sense to network with. Because what do you get out of making connections with people you don't know? A, sometime at a later point they help you with something, or you help them with something. B, maybe you make friends. C, maybe you have a good conversation about something. None of those three things are going to happen with a person who is all about themselves and boasting about how fantastic they are. Like that's, if you find yourself in a situation like that and you find it uncomfortable, because you probably are going to find it uncomfortable, especially if you're a shy person trying to talk to someone at an event, then just do the Homer Simpson into the hedge thing. Yeah, just fade into the hedge and be like, not my, it's not your circus, not your monkeys, that kind of thing. You don't need to interact with everyone. I think that's also maybe a good networking lesson. Like, pick the people you actually enjoy talking to, and then you will get something out of it as well. You don't feel like, okay, I have gone there and I've networked, I've done my duty, check, but you will go home invigorated by great conversations you might have had. And that's something that I think is important to mention, that like not every person needs to be networked with by you if you do not find it enjoyable.
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing I want to add to that is, if you do know somebody going to that conference and you're nervous, or you know that you're shy or you're introverted or whatever, sharing that with them beforehand can be really helpful too.
Just being open
and I know
about
that's
it.
been like, hey, I'm really nervous that I'm going here and I don't know anybody else, and I'm afraid of these particular situations. And I find that that's been really good for me. Or like, I don't know, I've been in situations where I know that somebody is uncomfortable because of what's happening in that situation. And like, I know this person will deal with this asshole, right? Like, it doesn't have to be me. Because those situations can be really, really unnerving. And I don't know, I feel like I'm trying to get better at being that person for other people. Like, hey,
really helpful if they let you know. Like if someone lets me know that they're gonna be uncomfortable in the situation, I can act entirely differently and make it so much easier for them than when I don't know, because I'm just gonna assume you're fine. Which is silly, because I can't just assume everyone's fine just because I'm fine. But like, if you don't tell me, even if that requires that kind of vulnerability, then that's going to be difficult. Which, by the way, if you like ever see me at an event or something, whether it's online or offline, like, please feel free to approach me and be like, hey, we talked once, I watched your Twitch stream, whatever, and I'm gonna help you. It's no biggie.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like the complicated thing for me is I still am shy. Like, people don't assume that I'm shy.
I can be really shy in some situations as well. So I think contextual and all, yeah.
And so like I often worry after leaving an event, like somebody probably thinks I'm the worst because I didn't engage with them in like conversation enough. I didn't seek them out. But like, it's honestly that I'm ADHD. So I might have talked to you and then like totally off my radar in the next second because there's a new source of stimuli. And I'm sorry. Like, I feel like there's at least 3 reasons why I should apologize after every event that I've been through. And like, I know that that's something that's a me thing, right? Like, I've got to work on that. But also, like, recognizing that a lot of times when I don't engage in conversation, it doesn't have to do with other people, right? It's a me thing. And so I try and think about that too as I approach situations where I'm like, oh, they really didn't like me, or they didn't interact with me, so they must think these things about me. That's a me thing. I don't know what they think about me, and I shouldn't project that onto other people. And that kind of helps to bring my energy back and to get prepared for the next time that I interact with people.
We've actually got a question from Groaning Witch. How would you go about meeting people at tech meetups if you're a total noob and extremely socially awkward? So I think one thing we've already mentioned is reach out to someone you already know. Yeah. If you don't know anyone, I usually hover weirdly on the sidelines until someone is kind enough to catch my eye and do the Pac-Man thing, or going to the bar, getting a drink, and then talking to someone there is maybe also helpful. If all else fails, talk to whoever's serving drinks. Do you have any more tips for this kind of situation?
I mean, I think that like number one thing for me has been to prepare in advance, right? Like you don't have to go into a tech meetup cold. If you do, totally fine, right? But for me, it's that preparation. I have to prepare myself for that, and like also reach out to other people. Like, hey, is anybody else going to this? Even reaching out to the organizer. Hey, I'm coming to the meetup, feeling super nervous. But at the very least, if you have done none of that, totally okay. The organizer should be identified in some way at that meetup, right? And the organizer is there to provide a good experience for every single person. So you go up to the organizer and say, I'm here. I'm an introvert. I'm shy. I'm nervous, whatever you are, and say, I could use a little support. And then that person is there to support you in some way. And oftentimes it's like, let me introduce you to this person because I think that you would be really great having this conversation or whatever. You know, so reach out to the organizer, because the many organizers are well versed in making sure that they can make connections with other people.
And also, like, extremely socially awkward. What even is that, and who isn't these days? Like, honestly, especially
if I'm there, just come be my friend. Like, same. Story of my life.
Especially in tech, like a lot of us are neurodivergent. Okay, wait. So basically step 1, be less socially awkward. No, you can be socially awkward. It's fine. You can also, that's the thing, you can be socially awkward while communicating and talking to people. Those things are not mutually exclusive. You can be socially awkward and stand on the sidelines, and you can be socially awkward and talk to people. That's perfectly fine. Often what we find to be socially awkward is nowhere near socially awkward as we think it is. Like, I've seen a few people at events who were really socially awkward, but those were verging into creepy territory. I am 100% guaranteeing that's not you. Like, if you worry about being socially awkward, that's not you.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh my God, Finn, that's my partner saying, if you're socially awkward enough, you'll be memorable. True. People remember me even before the hair. And I think a lot of that is because I am a personality of sorts. Like, I'm loud. I am probably awkward as well. I've learned to embrace that, but that's also how people remember me. So it's maybe not a bad thing to be socially awkward, is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, maybe there's not enough socially awkward people out there, right? Like, exactly. I enjoy it. I enjoy those conversations that I get into in those situations where I'm like, all right, this is somebody I feel comfortable around.
Yeah. Yeah. Does that answer your question, Groaning Witch? I hope it does. Like, also sometimes I feel it can be just diffuse the situation where you're like, listen, I'm a little bit socially awkward, but blah, whatever. And if it's like you're naming it, you're taking its power away. Okay, it does answer that question. That's good. Ramon says he finds awkwardness subjective. That is absolutely what I was going for here as well. Yeah, it's like, I think also that's what I meant. Like I keep having like neurodivergent people on the show and talking to them in other settings as well. And I don't know, in a purely neurotypical framework, we might be socially awkward, but together we're not. And that's what I love about it. Like, so yeah, maybe find the other neurodivergent people, find the other queer people if you're queer, or even if you're not. Like, we're very welcoming most of the time. If anyone has any more questions, I think that would be a good time to post them. I have one last thing to go through, which is what kind of events are a good, easy starting kind of thing. Like a huge conference might maybe that's easiest. I don't know. What do you think? Like, what's the easiest way to get into this whole offline? Oh, hi, Mia. To get into this like offline networking thing. I think online is a bit different. We can talk about that.
I think so much of it is reaching out to other people who have come before you, because it depends on your circumstance. So if there is somebody in your industry that you trust, reaching out to them and asking, is there a conference that you recommend? And I like often cold DMs, whatever. I had a cold DM from somebody who asked me, you recommended this conference. Why do you recommend it? And so
that is a valid cold outreach, by the way, because it provides context, as we talked about before.
And that's what I want to share with everybody who's listening. Like, one, if you've been to a conference that you would recommend, post about it, right? Like, because that's an opportunity for someone to ask you a question about that thing, and to help them decide whether or not that's a good and supportive place for them to be. And two, reach out to people who have posted about conferences, or just put a cold social media post out there saying, I'm interested in going to this conference. If anyone has experience, please let me know how this works out. And I always think it's valid to reach out to the conference organizers or meetup organizers. I think you're more likely to get a response from a meetup organizer, conference organizers, depending on the timeline. But like that last like 4 weeks, I've been an organizer before for events. Those last 4 weeks, even 6 weeks, are like, I don't know, they're soul crushing. I don't know how to describe it. Like, and then you feel good for 2 weeks afterwards. You're like, yeah, I'm going to do this again, after thinking you would never, ever in your entire life do it again.
Yep.
But like asking around, I think is my biggest advice. Like, find that person or find those people who have been there, somebody who can connect you. You know, like Krista Mars was not at the conference I was at, but he knew somebody there and he was willing to connect me with that person. And so I think that there's always somebody, if you're listening, you have me and you have Kai, and you can reach out and ask us about our experiences, and our network is your network, and hopefully we can connect you to the best place for you.
And oftentimes, like when someone reaches out and I don't have the immediate answer or connection, I will ask around in my communities and my networks, and actually make, like, if it's a genuine request, I will make an effort to find the right information for you, to help you out, because especially I think tech is often, or especially events are often less approachable to people who aren't cis white het men. So I will do everything in my power to help anyone from any marginalized community. Which is not to say that men shan't apply. You know, you feel free to reach out as well. But like,
I just want to say one thing, like that brought up a thought in my head. Check out the code of conduct for the meetup or the conference, because that also can be a really good indication
That's a very good point.
How they support people that are coming to the conference.
Yeah, definitely. Like conferences and meetups without a code of conduct, I frown upon. I mean, I think technically the one I'm speaking at in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, doesn't have a code of conduct either. But I asked them about it, and I think they just are overtaxed because, which is fine because they're a conference specifically about mental health and things related to that. So I'm feeling safe there. It's online. Online conferences are maybe a good way to like ease into it. Oh, there's Nomi.
Hey.
She's not impressed with me doing this at cuddle time, basically. Dog, yes, dog. That's Nomi. Yeah, so what was I saying? The ADHD is strong with me today, I have to say.
No, reaching it like
yes, online events. Are a good way to ease in because like you'll have a chat where you can try out interact like Bekah said at the beginning. It's so much easier to do online sometimes because you have time to think about what you're going to write. So like find online conferences if you don't feel ready yet for like big, huge in-person conferences for whatever reason, whether that's COVID or the networking that scares you. Find local meetups, maybe ones that are, it's like the special line between they're small enough to not be overwhelming like a conference, but also big enough so that you don't have like 4 people who are only talking to each other and not letting you in, Pac-Man in, basically. Yeah. That's something I would suggest. Find your online communities. If you're from a marginalized community, there are very often specific groups in tech, for specific groups for people in tech, like BIPOC in tech, women in tech, trans, queer people in tech, etc. Find those kinds of communities. If you're looking for a specific one, feel free to reach out to me. I know a few. Bekah might also know a few. Yeah. I think that's pretty much it then. Is there anything we've not covered, you think?
We have covered a lot of stuff, and I think it's been really great. So I appreciate you chatting about this stuff. And
thank you so much
again,
for coming on.
Reach out. I will say, like, this is totally anecdotal, but when virtual coffee was started less than a handful of years ago, we didn't have a code of conduct. Like, I came from academia. I didn't even know about code of conducts, right? And so, you don't want to make assumptions about where you're going. And that's why I think like having those personal connections is important. And like even sharing, I don't think that you need to reach out to organizers to say like, hey, you don't have a code of conduct, like what is going on? I think it's okay. Like if you feel that way, like, hey, I'm a person in a marginalized group. I'm really nervous about this situation. There's not a code of conduct here. Is there something that you have to protect me or other people in this group of people? That's totally valid. I know that's really hard. And so that should not be on you. But I also just want to say that like sometimes people are running really amazing things and they just don't realize it. And so even reaching out to other people who have been to that event and saying, hey, I'm not really sure what's happening. There's not a code of conduct here. You've said something positive about this event. What do you think? Yeah. And they might advocate on your behalf too. And that's another way to create a connection and also to make sure that it's a safe space for other people. You don't have to do it yourself, right? Like we're not in this alone. There are a lot of people out there that want to make sure that you have a safe place for you.
And there are entire whisper networks out there for marginalized people where we do talk not just about what companies are problematic, but also what conferences. So there's one conference that I feel particularly strongly about that most people who know me personally know how I feel about it. And if you reach out to me and you're like, hey, I was thinking of going to that conference, I'll be like, don't. And I'll tell you straight out. Like, I'm not naming them here or shaming them here, but if you DM me about that particular conference, I will tell you not to go.
Yep.
Because I know that you will not feel safe there if you're not a cishet white man. So, yeah. Basically, use what network you have. Consider the networks these people have. That's all your network. 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon or whatever. Also one more thing, follow the Grumpy MB on Twitch to be reminded about whenever these things will happen again. New year, new skills. If there's a topic you would like me to cover here, please let me know. DM me, check out my Linktree, whatever. It's the Grumpy MB on Linktree, because I would love to know what people want to learn more about. So today it was networking, last time it was freelancing. I'm thinking about doing something about public speaking, also maybe for people who aren't as prone to do it as I am. So yeah, if there's anything else you want to know, please let me know. Other than that, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much, Bekah, for taking the time for this. I know with kids home on a snow day, that is a lot to ask, but I really appreciate you chatting to me.
It's been awesome.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it as well. Yeah, obviously, if you enjoyed today, tell your friends about this. I will put this up on my YouTube in a few days. Yeah. Again, I encourage everyone to reach out to us via DMs. We'll probably get inundated. No, I don't think so. But just, yeah, if you reach out in like 2 months or 3 months, just make the connection back to the stream and then we'll have context. Right. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day, night, whatever it is for you. Thank you, Bekah.
Bye.
Bye.